All right, welcome everybody. This is Tampa Bay DevOps March edition. This is actually the first one we're having for 2022. I want to thank everybody for attending. My name is James Gress and I lead the Advanced Technology Center Cloud Engineering Group out of Tampa, Florida with Accenture. And we are growing every single day and just really trying to bring a lot of really cool things to the Tampa Bay area from a technology standpoint, either through this meetup or even just the folks that we have on our teams as well. We put this thing together to talk about all things DevOps. A couple of the towers that I am over is DevOps, infrastructure as code, DevOps from more of a software engineering perspective, data and AI, as well as cloud ops. So, as we go throughout the year, we might even touch on some of these areas within this particular group. We're always looking for speakers and interesting topics. So if you have one, please drop me a note. I do appreciate everybody that's put a paper out there, but you can also just reach out to me either in LinkedIn, Twitter, or my email address, or through this particular meetup chat group if you're interested. This will be a recorded call and posted on YouTube. So if you do not wish to be recorded, feel free to drop off this call and you can watch it at a later time. Some quick guidelines for the call is to please stay on mute unless you're asking a question. This just helps reduce any background noise that's in the background. But if you do have a question, Chris does want this to be more of an engaging dialogue. So feel free to come off of mute and ask your question. If you don't want to ask it out loud, or if the conversation is going in such a pace that you might just want to put it in the chat, and we will definitely try to get to all the questions, whether they come through chat or if you're able to ask during the session as well. We do encourage video. It makes it feel a little bit more socially engaging, but not required. We do have Chris, or let me give a quick update on DevOps Days Tampa Bay. So we were originally targeting May. Unfortunately, based on what we feel that the market demand was for where we were in being able to plan that event, we felt, for the benefit of the attendees and our sponsors, that we just weren't progressing the way we thought we should. And we definitely want to make year 2022 an engaging event and really good for everyone. So we've moved it out to October 7th. So some good news is we've kept all our existing sponsors and we're going to continue to market it for October 7th. So nice, good shout out to Noble9 and Moodsoft for continuing to be those sponsors. As well as gives us a little bit more time and a little bit more capability to put the word out and make sure that everybody can attend and really have a really good event. So save it on your calendars, October 7th. We're hoping to have hundreds of people there, make it a really great event for everybody. I know that at least for my side, since COVID came around, I haven't really gotten out that much, but as our offices, our Accenture Tampa office is opening back up, it's really good to get out there and start seeing faces again. I'm really looking forward to seeing the DevOps community as a whole across all of Tampa Bay. So if you can make it, we're going to make the pricing affordable for everyone. And, that's my kind of plug in there for Tampa Bay DevOps Days 22. And I will say that I came across Chris as being an organizer as well. So we're both helping organize this event. And as we started talking and doing some, techie geeky things, he started showing me some stuff that he was doing with dev containers. And I was like, okay, I think our group would really be interested in this type of material because I'm interested in this type of material. So we invited Chris along and he was gracious to be able to come and talk to us and kind of show us some really cool stuff that Microsoft is doing. So I really appreciate, Chris, you coming on and helping present some of this stuff. So with that, I know that you're a senior customer engineer, and I'm not 100% sure what that is. So I'm going to hand it off to you so you can give us a little bit more on what that is, and then you can just take it away with your presentation.
Yeah, and actually, I'll just go ahead and go to the next slide. We are going to be talking about dev containers today. I am a senior customer engineer at Microsoft. So I'm in, Microsoft has a lot of orgs inside of it, like, and I'm in what's the CXP org, customer experience, and I'm on the fast track for Azure team. And so what I do usually is, fast track is a service that any Azure subscriber can be nominated for, if you meet a couple of criteria, and we help that customer for free. We help identify the roadblocks that they're having trying to implement the solution in Azure. If they're having a problem with a service, we can help them work through that and take that feedback back to the product teams to help make the Azure platform better. We write Learn modules and Azure Architecture Center submissions and write docs. And so, I'm in Azure engineering, and my goal is to help Azure be a better platform for our customers to build on. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I have a blog, which I need to blog more, but what I'm probably going to start doing is making videos that can show some of this great content and cool things we have out there. You can find me on GitHub, and this slide deck and the resources will be there, and I will show you how to get it and use it because it's in the dev container. So let's talk about it. Dev containers have some prerequisites if you're trying to use it. Obviously, Visual Studio Code is one of them. We're going to go what are dev containers, how they work, why we might want to use them, quickly how to build them, and then we're just going to get into demos. We're going to play around with different repos that have dev containers and look at what we can do with them. So the prereqs. Obviously, you need Visual Studio Code. Now, there's some Docker prereqs, but they vary based on your OS. So in Windows, you do need Docker Desktop 2.0 or above and WSL. On Mac, you need Docker Desktop 2, and then Linux, you use CE or EE with Compose, but you can't use like the Ubuntu Snap version. And then once you have Visual Studio Code and Docker set up, you need the remote containers extension. And you can find this in, there's actually a bundle, like a pack, where you can have the remote SSL extension. You can have like the remote WSL extension and the remote container extension. They're all super awesome and useful, where you can use code on your desktop and like work on a remote SSH machine. So I do not know if you can use Rancher Desktop. The specific requirements say Docker Desktop, but good question. So what are dev containers? So these are environments you run in a container. So I'm running the Visual Studio Code UI on my desktop. Behind the scenes, it's creating a container and connecting to that. So I can run my tools and my like apps and programs inside the container, but I'm running the UI on my desktop. So if I'm a Windows dev or admin and I have to write bash scripts and I have to do Python and Node, setting those up in Windows can be annoying and hard, and having the right paths, slashes and all that. So it's more consistent and easier to run all those commands in a Linux environment a lot of times, and having them set up the exact same way every time. And so when I'm running dev containers on my local OS, that's where Visual Studio is running. I get the theming, I get like extra extensions, all that's running there, and maybe I have the source code in a folder. Behind the scenes, there's a container that's spun up that mounts that same source code. But I can say, I want Python 3. I want, Node 14. I want the AZ CLI installed. I need Terraform tools, version 10. Like I can list everything I want installed and all the backend extensions I want defined in my code base. And so every time I open up that dev container, I get the extensions, the tooling, and the versions I need to work. So why would we use them? Well, we got a new person starting. I can point them at a repo and they can clone it down and they can say open in a dev container and they have the exact version of Python ready to go. They have the exact version of Node set up. They have Angular installed in just the right place. If it's Python, it can pull down the code, it can set up the container, and then it can run like pip install. So we can have consistent tooling, easy onboarding experience. We can have the exact version our code base needs, not just whatever you installed on your machine. We can reduce our system conflicts. Like, I don't know if you've dealt with this, but when WSL also can pick up some of the same Windows commands, it gets really annoying if you've installed Node and Python in WSL, you've installed Node and Python in Windows, and now like you get some weird conflicts, or you're trying to install a package and the path gets all screwed up, or it just keeps going on. Like, did I set it up right? Do I have the right things? And so by having everything isolated, project 1 needs Python 3.9, project 2 needs Python 3.10. This one needs a certain version of .NET with these extensions. This one needs Angular, so-and-so. So because everything's isolated in its own container, there's no more conflicts. And then, like I said, it's customizable and automatable. So you can have scripts that run on startup. So we want to install our dependencies. We want to check for updates. Like that, you can do the things every time you open up that dev container so that it's all set up. It's like somebody came off mute for a sec. Is there a question? Okay. So how do you build a dev container? When you have Visual Studio open, you go into the command palette and you have that remote container extension installed, you can just select the add development container configuration files option. That's going to bring up the UI that lets you pick what type of dev container you want. And there's a lot of containers that are already out there. They can be as simple as here's a Netline or a Debian, but they have choices on things like, oh, I want a Jekyll one. I need one for Python. I need one for .NET or C++ or Ruby or Rust, or maybe I just want a Ubuntu image and I want Terraform and the ACLI and AWS tools installed. So I'm going to show you how we can go in and configure that. It adds this folder, .dev container, to your repository, and it has this dev container JSON file, which points at a Docker file. And so you also have a Docker file that you can customize. This dev container can handle port mapping. So if you're running a node application locally, it handles the port mapping so that you can just open it with your browser and it'll redirect to the container and you can debug into the container. So all the things that you're used to using, you can continue to use. So let's go play around with demos. I say I didn't have a lot of slides.
Yeah, you weren't kidding.
This isn't really a slide. I mean, kind of. So I'm actually using a Markdown thing called MARP, which is a extension I found. And so I'm doing Markdown Slides. And this is running inside of a dev container. So I've got my extension here and I can export out HTML and PowerPoint. And it's all set up. You can put this down and it'll work the exact same way every time. And so I've got a dev container. So this is for my Markdown editing. And I've got 3 extensions. I've got my Markdown all-in-one extension, and I've got a spell checker, and I have my MARP extension that I've specifically said I want to use here. My Docker file, and it's running just a base Bullseye extension. And then because I want to be able to export PDFs or PowerPoints, I needed to install Chromium. So that's part of my Docker file. It's all defined here. And I can, I can close and rebuild my container, or I can just open it outside of, I gotta go pick a folder. I can open it outside of the dev container if I wanted. Just, I'm gonna go to a folder. So this is just a base folder, a base, application. This is some of my samples where I have .NET code and I have infrastructure as code. This is going to be in Bicep. And let's say I want to add a Docker container, a dev containers to this so that my DevOps people can play around with the AZCLI consistently. My .NET version is going to be .NET 6, and I know I'm going to do it. I'll hit F1 to go into my command palette, and I'm going to look up remote containers. And so right here, I've got add development stuff. So like there's some recommendations, C#, Node, but there's also ones provided by the community. So I can like, as well, I want to do an Azure static app. I want to do Dapper or Node with Mongo. Here's a community one for Salesforce. I want to do Docker inside Docker, so I can Docker my Docker, like, or I want to do Kubernetes. So yeah, here's one for Bicep in the CLI form. So there's a lot of different options that let it so that I don't have to make sure I have things installed and configured on my local machine. I'm gonna just do it in my container. So most of my stuff is .NET. So I'm just gonna pick the C# one. And now I've got some options because there are variants available. Many of these top level containers are hosted by Microsoft, and I'll show you how to find those and where those are. But I'm gonna say .NET 6. And somebody mentioned earlier that they also had a .NET app with Angular. Well, maybe I need Node and I want to pick a certain version and say I want Node installed on it. And I could pick some tools. And I'll show you where these are too. These are scripts you customize. So I want the Azure CLI. Maybe I need Go or Gradle, or I need to have Helm and Kubernetes installed, PowerShell or Terraform. So I pick what I need. And I'll answer your question in 1 second, Jermaine. And I've got a Docker file now. It's showing me the variant and the Node version I picked. It added an extension automatically for C# so that when I open that container, you can see there's comments here about how to forward ports if I need to, and even how to do the dev certs that you might need to do. So it's commented there for me, and that I want to add the CLI here. There's a Docker file, and this one is going from, see, there's a VS Code dev containers with .NET in it. So now I've added my stuff. I can hit F1 and say reopen and contain. And what this will do is it'll start it. Now I can show the logs. So you can see it's doing some pulling, and it's setting stuff up, and it's detecting things. And now I'm in, sorry for the pop-ups. I'm in my dev container. So my normal machine is Windows. This one is Linux. And I'm in a workspace. I've got .NET version 6 installed. I've got the AZCLI installed, like I selected. So now I can have a consistent experience of being able to have all the tools I need right in there. So the extension, I'm sorry, I might have skipped a step for you guys. When you're doing this, the extension, like I said, is the remote containers extension. You want the remote containers extension. This lets you use your dev containers. So this will give you all of those capabilities. And it gives you a couple other ones that I'll touch on, where you can pretty much open a container and open a folder in a container. So now I've got all of that. Let me go back to the dev container repo I had open a minute ago. But this is going to reopen an existing container. So instead of having to pull and rebuild everything, it opens quick. And what you'll notice is if you go into Docker Desktop while this is running, you'll see I've got a whole bunch of different instances. It'll start the ones like when you open a dev container, it'll have the container running, and when you quit Visual Studio, it'll stop that container, but it'll still be there. So if this can take up a lot of space if you have a ton of images, but because they're all built from common base images, it's not a literal ton of space. But if you want to clean them up, you can delete these and clean up your images. So I am going to share links to these documentation and these repos, but they have samples out here for like, I want to Go, or I want to try Rust. And I downloaded a few of these to set them up because I want to show, like, I don't have Rust or Go installed in my machine. So let's take a look at like how I can have no tools installed on my machine, but still be able to do some of these. So like, take a look at Rust. And I'll share links to this. So they have Markdown documentation. They'll walk you through how to do it, how to set it up. They link to the repository. But in Rust, you might, I can go in here and I can set a breakpoint in the code. Yeah, where's my mouse? Set the breakpoint. There you go. But you cargo, or you hit F5 to invoke Rust. So on my machine, I don't have cargo installed. I don't have Rust installed. But if I open this in a container, I'm going to have Rust installed. I'm going to have cargo. I'm going to be able to execute Rust code. I'm going to be able to debug it. And yeah, there we go. So now I can go cargo build. So it can build. I can hit F5. It's launching the executable and it's letting me debug Rust, which I don't have installed on my machine. I'm debugging inside of this dev container for the Rust sample. Same thing with like Python. Yeah, just tried the Python. Yeah, so someone asked, like, how do you clean that up? You can just come in here and you can stop this, and under images, you can say clean up, and that'll remove things. There is one volume that gets created for Visual Studio Code. This has, since I have a lot of them, but it has the server install tools and stuff. But this is what is like super powerful, and I'm going to get into how we customize these. So, and I haven't zoomed in. You can see they have variant, and there is format details for how to customize this dev container file. And then you can actually have additional settings where you want to set a certain path, or you want to set certain settings on Python directly. You want to add in extensions. I want to have ports. So let's reopen this one. And then I'm going to go into the documentation to show a little bit about how we're going to customize our dev containers. Hopefully you guys are getting excited about this stuff because this is really cool to me. So this has Flask, and this is going to run on port 9000. So I'm just going to paste that in there. And you see it's running something localhost 9000. And it even says your app is running on 9000. I want to open in my browser, and it opens a tab. And so my local browser on my desktop is debugging into the application running in Python in the container. And I can see the port mappings I have. I'm sorry, let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. So you can see like the port, it's 9000, my local address, the process that's running. You can copy the address and open it in a browser and go take a look at that in the editor. So it'll do a lot of this mapping for you out of the box in a lot of these scenarios. So let's take a look at how we can actually go into the dev container reference. We have images we can specify. So if there's a base image that you want to leverage, like you want to have an Ubuntu image that has the Terraform or the AZ CLI installed, you can do that. You can add in an app ports to forward properties. You can specify users that run in it. You can have additional mounts. A lot of this is all very well documented. What's cool is that like the documentation is great on this. So like how to get into some of the preview options and look at the volumes. So by adding that extension, it also gives us Remote Explorer. You can see I've set up a few different demos. These are all different containers that I was playing with. I've got a lot of these different try ones. This is the one that's running right now that I'm connected to, the Python image. I can see like the folder it is and the name of the container, the images that are being run, where the configuration is, the mounts. So you've got the capability to explore how that's configured. And then we can go in and start changing it, adding containers we want installed. So, if I wanted a different container added, or a different extension added, like maybe I wanted Python in there. Let's look at a few other things we could do. Pun intended. What I've done when I try to use these is I'm down here and I'll find the name of the identifier. This is the identifier you need if you want to add a container into your dev, or an extension into your dev container. And then you can just paste it in here and then hit F1 and do rebuild container. And it'll close your current container and it'll rebuild it and add in the things that you might need.
So Chris, is most of the setup in this dev container.json, because that's manipulating the VS Code server that's running in your container. So
correct.
If you wanted to specifically install, let's say you're doing some, like, I don't know, machine learning stuff or whatever, and you need a certain OpenCV package, for Python, you can still manipulate this Docker file.
Yeah, so like this was optional, uncomment this section to install additional OS packages. So if I wanted, and that's what I did in my my dev container repo. I wanted Chromium there so that I could have that package on the dev container. Once this pulls down and builds the image, it'll then install the packages I need. And so if you wanted OpenCV, whatever the package name of OpenCV is, you could have it in there. It's installed, it's configured, so they have guidance on that. Now the repo out there, the repo out there is crazy cool. So I want to get to the reaches up here. Sorry, I thought I had the tab open and I didn't. So I will. Yeah, I thought I had it open. So this is the repo. So they have documents here on the links to those try ones. But if you look inside the repo itself, there's a script library. So these are some of those scripts that get pulled in to show you how I want to invoke maybe Maven Debian. And so someone has already written, how to get this all set up or invoked inside your dev container.
Wow.
And they have container scripts, and these you add and they show you who's maintained or written these, how to use them. So in some of these repositories that you open, might have
a custom script that's run in
a
the
custom
Docker
script
file to set it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So like
I was
nice people have done all the hard work. We should take note of this folder on GitHub and be like, we don't have to do anything, just copy paste with at least a starting point.
Like there's a PHP one. They've set up all of these images for you. I was just trying to find it because I remember seeing a script in one of them. I was just looking.
Where do you put the script? You put the script right in that dev container, and it'll pick it up or something.
Yeah, it picks it up, and
maybe a Java one.
So this says copy library scripts sh and the sh, and I want to run it inside my container. So they give you some advice on how to do it and how to, like, the CI process for this repo will automatically add them into the dev container library scripts folder. And they give you tips on how to download it, install it, additional arguments. Like, it's so well documented. It's awesome. So these are scripts that they've given you,
So you,
but they also,
so you actually have to, you add the script to the .dev container, and then you tell the Docker file, you have to edit the Docker file to copy it into it, like you would usually with Docker anyways.
let me go back to this repo, and I just added this dev container and Docker file, right? So I can hit F1 to bring up my command prompt again, and I can do configure container features. What this will do is it'll bring back up this menu again. So if I need to go back and
these are all those scripts.
Yeah, so if I need to do a couple of other things and I want to pick certain versions, I want it locked in, it'll add some of these, and inside the Docker file, I believe the way they built these. So these are all built a certain way that it'll go pull those scripts and automatically configure them.
Well, that's a little bit faster because it's downloading versus setting up.
So let me go back to my dev container repo first. I'm going to make sure I share this URL because this is out there in my GitHub.
This is
and
flipping
you should
awesome.
be able, right? Like, this stuff is like cool.
I
gets
knew
you
it was
really-
I knew it was cool a year ago, but is all this new?
Oh.
Like this drop down stuff? Like,
Yeah. So I've linked out to the documentation we just went through. There's also a learn module where it'll walk you through
yeah, that's good.
adding
These are-
dev containers to existing stuff.
Yeah, I've done a lot
So
of these
that's all
before. They're
there.
very useful.
Whoops, I closed the wrong tab. Let's back up. I've got links to these repos. I've got links to the extensions, and then the marketplace. And then what I was playing around with earlier was there is an MCR. This is the Microsoft Container Registry, and it links out all of their stuff. And I might check this. I hadn't checked these in yet before. But if we look at all of the dev container images, they've got containers for, Python, C++, Anaconda, Jekyll, all built in, like, ready for you. And I noticed an issue with this. So one of their try.net repo, which I'm probably going to submit a PR on. So it comes with a variant of 3.1, and I wanted to change to 6.0, but .NET Core doesn't support 6.0. It's 5.0. You actually have to change the image from .NET Core to .NET in order to get 6.0. So I was poking around the different.
.NET is 6.0, but .NET
Yeah,
Core
so
is 2.
that's because they
5.
renamed .NET Core, remember, to just .NET. So they
Right.
still had a legacy version for .NET Core that was 5.0, but .NET has 6.0. So if you ever get like a weird thing, like that was something I saw. But you can go out and look at the tags inside that container registry. But yeah, this is some really cool stuff, and I've leveraged this for consistency and reliability. Like I have, let me open a folder, and and like I was building, I do some IoT work in my day to day, and I was building out. So in this particular case, this was an older image, but it copied down some of the CLI scripts that were, and it checked them in, and it added them to my close. Thank you. It added them into my repository, and so it doesn't show that it's referencing these scripts, but you'll see it here. See that copy library scripts sh in temp scripts, and then run these scripts, common Debian and AZ. That's what that looked like. it got added to my Docker file. I think this was an older image because it was from 2 months ago and it was just using the base bullseye. But when I am working in Terraform or Bicep or ARM nowadays, yeah, every single time I'm like, I want the CLI, I want all of my stuff there, and then I could just open it and I have it set up and configured. And if I keep my volume mounted, like if I don't clean out everything and I keep my volume mounted, it'll remember like my account that I have set because it's persistence. Like the volume is there, kind of persisting that. But yeah, amazing set of tooling, and it's really helpful to develop in a Windows UI, which I'm comfortable with, and also building and executing scripts in a Linux, command, container space, which is what will probably be happening on the remote servers, or even the CI/CD. I just don't think it'll work. So you have to have like that. That's just.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking, Chris, is because, like, if I go into a repo right now
Containers
and I
to use
configure it in such a way that everything, it would make
Yeah.
more sense to use the dev container versus, prime example, right? I have a repo that does nothing but Bicep. So Bicep, having that installed on people's machines has been a chore for me. But if they don't have Docker desktop because they haven't been messing with Docker.
Well, there's one other trick for it, which I was about to get to. This is the system requirement though. Like for using this locally, like here, local requirements. So local Windows, you need desktop. Local Mac, you need desktop. Local Linux, you need remote hosts. What might be a remote host? Well, it could be a container somewhere else. It also could be GitHub code spaces. And GitHub code spaces uses the same dev container JSON file as Visual Studio. So if I click this, it's going to set up a code space based on my dev container JSON file, and then I can connect to it from my local Visual Studio code, or I can run Visual Studio in the cloud, connected to the space, running my dev container with my extensions and all my stuff mapped. And those slides that I wanted to export as PowerPoint or PDFs. Yeah, see, I have some other extensions because I have settings sync. I can look at them and edit them in the cloud, like. So I can live do this stuff, and then I could export my slide deck to a PowerPoint or a PDF if I wanted. Like that's cool. Or if I don't want to connect to my code space from my browser, where I'm remote and I want to open it in my desktop, it'll come up and ask me if I want to connect to my remote thing. So if I have that machine learning algorithm that's intensive, and I'm on a crappy little thin client, super weak laptop, I can still do all that high-end computing and stuff. Yeah, again, this is sync issues, but I can connect and do all the high-end processing remotely. So there's some cool stuff, I think. You guys think this is kind of cool?
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty cool, but now that I think about it, Facundo mentioned it. Technically, if you want to use this on Windows at a corporation, you have to pay to have a Docker license, Docker desktop. If you go Docker desktop to use this now.
Yeah, my first workshop ever was a 4-hour workshop on Docker Kubernetes, and it was 2 days after Docker announced their licensing changes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ridiculous.
Look, I work for Microsoft.
Yeah.
They have an agreement. There's a licensing thing there for Docker. A lot of big corporations probably will. Small ones, you're right, or medium, it might hit or miss. There is, I can't tell you about the licensing, like that's something between your company and Docker. So, you know, I can't help you with that one. I just know that that's what the tool is. And yeah, so it's for fewer than 250 and less than 10 million. You can use it at home for personal use and education and open source. So like if you want to, and this is actually great for that type of thing where, you know, like I said, you got to have version 12 of Node, you got to have Angular installed and configured just the right way. Like we can do that. Why don't we do that right now? Let's new folder. Call it Angular. And, you know, right away, I'm going to add development files. And maybe I want to see all the definitions. Maybe I'll look for Angular. No, I don't see one. You know, I don't see React, but maybe I just want to work with Ubuntu, or maybe there's we'll do Node. And this will be based on the 16. I don't know if I need any of these right now, so I'll just leave it alone. And then, you know, post create commands. So like after it builds the image, I could tell it to do a thing, or I can come in here and, you know, if we need to make sure that there's an Angular package, maybe I need that. So here we want to do this, right? We want to install, was it Angular? I have no idea if that's what it is, but. Go look it up. I was just trying to find the quick start setup. There we go. Angular CL.
Yeah, this is what I was asking about earlier.
Yep. So now I can be open in a container, and I can watch it build. So you can show the log. You can see what it's doing. You know, it's pulling down depending upon your connection. Because I think I already had a Docker file. It started up pretty quick.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed is I was working on a huge repo that's using dev containers, and I noticed, especially if you have a lot of requirements, dependencies, it can take a little bit for it to start up.
I had a
Yeah.
question about this, about some of this stuff. So let's say that you're doing, you're doing development. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. I
Okay.
laughed at the question about the poor Microsoft team.
Oh yeah. So let's say that you've got, you want to do your development using this container development environment, right? And then, but as part of your development, right, you produce an artifact that is itself container. Do you run into like Docker issue, or do you do a situation where you would just map it to something like a local volume and then build like that if you were going to build a Docker image off of it?
I'm gonna let this finish doing what it's doing, but there was a actually I'll just create a I'll just reopen a different folder. There was a I'm opening a container. There was a what we were talking about before is there is options for Docker and Docker. So if I want to continue configure these,
Okay, maybe I missed that.
Yeah, see Docker and Docker support, and you can reuse the host Docker. You have Docker and Docker support. There's Minikube support. Like they have some of those options, and I definitely get that when you're testing experience locally. But I would
So that's part of
I would
that
still-
scripting support stuff that you were talking about, right? Where you can just
Yeah.
add on extensions
Or
in there and it hooks it in.
or base images that are automatically have Moby installed so that you can do Docker on Docker stuff. So
Yep. Okay. Cool. And
Oh.
I'm looking at that drop down. That means that there are some examples that are published on there that have it, right? Like I could just pull it down and play with it, right?
I might have quit this before I finished. I probably quit it before I finished building it out. So let's see, there we go. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I just wanted to share all this cool stuff with you guys. So like I said, if you can't do Docker, maybe you can do code spaces. If you there's just options. But you saw how quickly you can set up a tool. You can set it up repeatedly, the exact same way. I can go out and find repos that have dev container configurations, and especially like with open source, if I want to.
Yeah, I mentioned Home Assistant is one of them,
Yeah,
which is one of the most popular GitHub repos. I think it's like the top 10.
oh, you said Home Assistant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So they have a dev container folder in here, and if we look at this, this is building out their own Docker file. They have a variant, and they have a certain locked version of Node. They don't want you contributing. They get their app mounted, and once it pulls down, it does bundle install and npm install.
Yeah, this isn't their main. They have multiple repos.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because Home Assistant I've found that the rate at which commits happen, you can't this is what this problem solves. Is you can't possibly keep your machine as up to date as the main running branch. So dev container to the rescue. You would never be able to.
Oh, amen to that.
so NVM thing that tried to solve this with Node years ago, and it's still a thing where this,
Yeah,
when you're on a Linux machine or a Mac machine, it just like points, it'll install multiple versions of Node, and it'll just use pointers under the hood, like file system links, to remap which one responds to Node or So yeah, this is starting up, and if we take a look at this container, it's building the Docker file. But NVM does this. There's like VNV, VENV, which Python uses, because some tools need Python 3.9, some need 3.10, some apps that are legacy maybe need Node 10, others need Node 14. But yeah, and look, it's doing the install of all my dependency. So in .NET, maybe did you do an npm install? Well, this will automatically pull down the do an npm install, or a bundle install for Ruby. Yeah, of course. This is the thing that I think everyone needs to know about. If you're ever on GitHub anywhere, TipKit. Absolutely love this. Loads a web editor.
Is that
This works from anywhere on GitHub. Like you can just, like, if you're on a repo, you can hit dot, it'll load a web version of Visual Studio. If you're in a pull request, you can do it. You can, it's crazy.
Wait, what is it?
Just hit period. So if I go into a repo like that, and I hit period on my keyboard, it changes the URL to github.dev. But
what do you click on and hit period?
nothing. You just hit period.
No.
So when you use that feature,
Oh, you have to get signed in.
Let's see here. That's still going.
I think you do. But when you hit period, does it recognize the dev container folder? Is that what?
No. The period thing just loads a web front end. Like all it loads is a web version. If you want to do a if you want to recognize that dev container,
Yeah.
you can go into your code spaces. Now this needs to be enabled to be an org or something. I can say new code space and I can pick a repo. Like my feature flags has a space, and I can create a code space, and it's going to base it on that dev container image found. It sees the dev image dev container there. It's going to build it based on that. That's different. This is like just going to, let's see here.
And for the
web
code
editor.
spaces, is that I mean, obviously using computing, does that cost anything? What does that?
Yes. Yes. It's available for team or enterprise. There is a charge for it. So you have to enable it in an org, and there is some pricing on it, like how much the CPU runs. That I'm just trying to share that it does work, like the container that you build locally, which this one just finished for Home Assistant. Container that you build locally that you might use for repeatable development is the same one you can use when you spin up a code space. So if I have a powerful machine here that run lots of containers, cool. If I have a crappy little laptop that can't, but I have code spaces enabled for my GitHub org, I can have a beefy machine in the cloud that I connect to and still work in Visual Studio locally, but all my compute is done in the cloud. Or was it Node minus V? Yeah, so they said that they needed Node 14. This has Node 14 installed. My machine doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's all I've got, everyone. I again, is there any more questions that anyone wanted to chat about, or anything else that I might have missed?
This was
Let's go
great.
back.
Great job, Chris. Round of applause.
I am not involved in Coder. I think Coder is another cool competing project. I just haven't done it, but yeah. I think Patrick nailed this. Onboarding, consistency, source controlled templates. That can outweigh those licensing costs for a lot of people. I mean, point someone to repo, tell them reopen in a container, you have a fully configured environment. Done. Set of scripts, dependencies installed, done.
And there's really nothing
Like
stopping.
I'm ready to contribute to Home Assistant now, and I have everything installed the way they wanted it. I've got the Docker that has all the things. It ran the NVM, installed the things. It ran the bundler. Like, it's got the extensions that they want me to use to work in a consistent manner. It set the editor rules. Like, it set my to ZSH, like all the things that they wanted.
There's really nothing forcing somebody to use this
Nope.
to contribute code to a repo. They would just have to scrap the dev container and just go and do everything themselves.
Well, yeah, I could just reopen it without the dev container. There you go. It's without my dev container. It's suggesting I do that, but like, cool, I'm in Windows and this is using Ruby and I can do gem installed. Oh wait, I don't have that installed. I gotta go install that. And then I can run my Node stuff, right? Wait, I don't have that installed. I gotta go set that up. So like, and if you're one of those people that pulls stuff down and just starts to try to go, and you don't know all the things that you need, like, oh, I have to have bundle. Like, okay, what's that? Like, okay, now I gotta go read the setup documentation and okay, manual environment.
Oh yeah,
But
look, it's funny.
it-
Look at how short
right
it
there.
is.
It's like, do this and you're good, or install that, do this on this environment, do this in this environment, fork that, run this,
Right.
set up your. Yeah, and like that's one of the other things I forgot to point out. Like they add in tasks and stuff. So if I'm trying Rust, like they can add in VS Code launch settings. So they've already wired in as part of the configuration my launch settings. So I can do like F1 and tasks, run tasks.
Yeah, the Home Assistant one does that because they enforce like
Yeah.
you have to pass linting, otherwise your
Yeah.
PR won't be accepted. So they're like, did you run that task in the dev container?
Yeah, and this didn't work when I tried doing it because I'm not in my dev container. So if I reboot up my container, I hit F5, I got an error. This time I'll do it. And again, it can take up space if you do a lot like I'm doing in this demo. But now I can have 5 and it runs, and that's all fine. I can do the build task. I can do my cargo check, and like they set those up. When you're done with all your containers, I had hinted at it before. I'm gonna make sure I close that one. I can go in here and I can delete these, and then I can go into my images and just say clean up, check a couple of boxes, and go. It'll clean up the stuff that I'm not using. So.
All right, Chris. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording side. And
Thank you all for joining.
Happy to have people hang out if they want to ask a question that maybe is not recorded. But before we end the recording, Chris, this is super powerful stuff, right? I see this so applicable for like, if you're bringing new team members onto the team, they can instantly, like within minutes, be able to start being productive because their environment's all set up. They don't have to go through a run book, etc. Or even if you have open source projects that are out there and you have a very specific configuration, you don't have to worry about them trying to learn that configuration or go through the headaches of doing all the readmes and getting it all set up properly. And just the power of it, being able to switch from like this type of environment to that type of environment almost in an instant. It's super powerful stuff. So
you can get as much out of it as you want. Like if you just say, oh, I want .NET, cool, you can do that. But if you want to go that step further and get the extensions in place and like get all the tools you need and get it set up, like it can streamline things a lot.
And again, I really appreciate you coming on and doing our meetup. This was a great session.
Thank you.
So, the next folks that we have on are gonna have to live up to your standard now. But no, I really do appreciate the minimalism on the slides, a lot of the demo stuff. Again, I really appreciate it and thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. Feel free to follow me or reach out or connect. More than available. And I shared the link to this repo. So if you're curious how I made these slides and stuff, it's all there. It's all open, and it's all right there. There's the Markdown. I even added Font Awesome so I could have some of those little icons. So feel free to take a look at this and learn. This is what they call MARP.